amazing Assembly chairperson, Deacon Julie Wilson, who's also our Synod Secretary. Julie, take it away.
Thank you, Bishop. I bring greetings on behalf of the Synod Assembly Planning Team, and thank you for joining us for this pre-assembly meeting. And one of the first things I want to say is you all got onto Zoom, which is amazing. So thank you for your grace and your patience as we're all doing this new thing. And we've had to pivot in so many ways this year, and we know that this is virtual. It's going to look and feel different, but the work we're going to do is going to be the same, whether we're in person or online. And so we thank you for being a part of this assembly this year. A couple kind of Zoom housekeeping things is it is important that we all remain muted so that everyone can be heard. And also because this is going to be recorded. And so we have if you're using a desktop computer or laptop, in the bottom left-hand corner of your Zoom screen, you'll see there's a little microphone. If you're muted, there's a red line. If you are on an iPad, I believe it's on the top. And so if you can look now for that mute button and mute yourself. Also, if you would like to speak, you can chat in the comments, and that way we know that you would like to raise a question or have something to say. If you could use that chat feature, and we will help. And if you have questions, let's answer them as we go and not wait till the very end so that we can get through this all swiftly. And also, I wanted to say in the bottom, so you all have your name on your little screen. And some of you, if you're signing from an iPad or something else, it might not have your name. It would be great if you could change your name, and you'll see in your little square on Zoom, there's 3 little dots. If you click on those 3 little dots at the bottom, it should say rename. And if you would just let us know who you are so that we can keep track of that and better know who is here. So again, I bring greetings from the planning committee. We're grateful that you are here. And we had 65 people or 65 screens on last night for this same meeting. So it is great that you're joining us this afternoon, and we look forward to seeing you Friday at 5:30 for our practice. We're practicing our voting, and we'll gather together as we gather as the Northwestern Minnesota Synod from all these different places, which is pretty beautiful to see on a Pentecost weekend. So thank you, and I'm going to hand it back to Bishop Bill.
Thanks, Julie, and once again, welcome. We're going to move rather quickly through the items here, but don't hesitate to raise your hand or chat or send a chat or just unmute yourself and speak. We'd love to answer your questions and hear from you. Just a quick note of who's on the call from our staff and from the team. Obviously, you've heard from Julie, and you've heard from our communications director, Chris Sternier. Sharon Josephson, our Synod Vice President, is also on the call and will be speaking. Catherine Dickey, our Synod Treasurer, will be sharing about our Synod financial plan. John Olson, our Synod Minister for Vocations, will be sharing about the compensation guidelines. And did I miss anyone? Pastor Carla Mickelson, our Associate for Administration, is here, and she'll be talking about all the exciting matters related to the Constitution. So looking forward to that as well. All right. Let's begin with rules, huh, Chris?
Do you want to speak to the goals of the
Oh, yeah,
Synod
right.
Assembly?
Yes, thank you. Please. So what you're looking at here is the introduction letter that comes from me to all of the registrants for Synod Assembly. And we have some specific goals related to the Assembly, and they align with our the three values that we're articulating as a synod. Our first value, faithful in relationships, is a relational value. It is about remembering who we are with respect in relationship to each other at all times, remembering that we are siblings in Christ and we're all children, beloved children of God. And we do that just like God never forgets who God is in relationship with us. So being faithful in relationships, we want to just have an opportunity to be together as the expression of the church called synod and experience our life together in Jesus. And then we want to figure out how we can help one another as we strive as members of congregations to live our life of faith out faithfully every day. Our second value is authentic and welcome, which is about welcoming people, but also welcoming the unique gifts that each person brings. All of us have authentic gifts authored by God, and we need all the gifts in order to be the kind of church that the Spirit is calling us to be. So we will reaffirm in a variety of ways our commitment to be a diverse and welcoming church, and we will be, you'll see, we'll be lifting up and celebrating the many gifts and ministries of our synod. And finally, we want to demonstrate a love that makes a difference. Love is no good if all we have is good intentions. Love actually, as our Lutheran understanding of ethics, is that love actually has to make a tangible, real difference in the life of our neighbor. And so we want to focus on some of the lines of effort in our strategic plan that are designed to make life better for all of us: congregational vitality, raising up diverse leaders, and striving for justice. And we'll just be rolling up our sleeves and doing the hard work that needs to be done so we can be live together as God's people, as the Northwestern Minnesota Synod. Moving on, we're going to jump right into the exciting, amazing rules of the assembly. Everybody loves rules, right?
Just a quick little note. So our synod website is nwmnsynod.org. On our homepage, you'll see this banner, the 2021 Virtual Synod Assembly. When you click on that, you will come to all the things we'll be talking about today and all the things that you'll need for this coming weekend. And so here you will find the rules of organization and procedure.
And we're going to look, you are welcome to read the entire document of the rules and organization and procedure. It's an exciting document, 20 pages long with lots of constitutional references, and I certainly invite you to study it closely. What we're showing you here are the substantive changes. If you've attended an assembly in the past, you're somewhat familiar with rules and how those work, and we'll certainly walk you through it on the day of. But these are the substantive changes that we've made to the rules with the guidance of our synod attorney and also Ralph Nickelmo, who will also be functioning as our parliamentarian for the day. And these rules are tailored to the unique nature of this assembly, virtual, and also the fact that we are conducting a lot of business in what would normally be a 2-day assembly, but doing it in just 1 day. So the first and most important one is you need to have this date in mind, which is noon on Thursday, May 20th. That's the day before anything actually happens live with our assembly. Of course, Friday evening, we're going to gather for a practice session, and there will be amazing, fabulous prizes for people that show up. But we will practice that evening. But even before that, on Thursday, May 20th, is a deadline to submit any germane motions or amendments to resolutions. And they must be submitted via email to that stated email address. Now, procedural motions will still be allowed during assembly, such as motions to refer or to table or to call the previous question or to suspend or revise the rules, or calling for the orders of the day to bring us back to the agenda. This is, it's still possible for folks to speak for and against motions and resolutions to vote for, to vote against, and to take procedural actions to do with these, what people would like to see done. But if you want to make germane amendments, those must be made by Thursday, May 20th. The same is true for nominations for elections from the floor. We will have a full slate, an entire and complete ballot for all of the positions for Synod Council, and for Churchwide Assembly, and for the other offices, for Treasurer, for example, that we'll be electing at this assembly. And there will be a full ballot, and we will entertain a unanimous ballot at the assembly if we can. However, if you would like to make nominations, either nominate yourself or someone else whom you've already approached, you may make nominations from the floor, but they have to be made by noon on Thursday by emailing that same address. Same would be true for proposed revisions to the budget, which will be the other major item of business that we'll be addressing. We'll have 6 resolutions to consider. We will have the proposed revisions to, we will have our 2022-23 proposed budget, and we will also have the elections and as the major items of business coming before us. So if you'd like to make revisions to the proposed budget, that must be done by Thursday, May 20th. Also, our Constitution makes a provision that if you do propose a revision, you must propose an offsetting. If you propose an increase, for example, in expenses, there has to be an offsetting revenue increase somewhere in the budget. So just FYI, if you choose to offer an amendment. Debate on main motions and related motions will be limited to 12 minutes, which will be approximately 6 speakers. And where possible, we'll alternate speakers speaking for and against the motion or the resolution that's on the floor. If you would like to obtain the floor, we certainly encourage you to do so. And you'll do that by sending a private chat message to the person named moderator. And you'll want to state your name, your congregation, and your reason for obtaining the floor. Questions or thoughts, comments about the substantive rule changes for this year? Not seeing any, let's move on. I think we've got the budget and financial reports now.
I wonder if we should move to the resolutions.
Oh, okay.
Catherine on right now.
Okay.
So maybe move to the resolutions and give Catherine a moment.
Sure. Let's start with the strategic plan. So this first resolution, resolution number 1, is a resolution to affirm the strategic direction of the Northwest Minnesota Synod. So very intentionally, this originates, by the way, from the Synod Council, who worked hard on the strategic plan and were part of that process over the last year. And so what that means procedurally is that this and all the other resolutions, they all originate from Synod Council. They will be on the floor, open for debate as soon as they appear on the agenda. So this resolution very intentionally does not ask you to affirm the wording that is in some of the exhibits that we provided, Exhibit A and Exhibit B, which we'll look at here in a moment, but rather to affirm the general overall direction expressed in the lines of effort. So I'll just read those starting at line 15. Be it resolved that the Northwestern Minnesota Synod and Assembly affirm the overall direction expressed in Exhibits A and B, specifically the 4 lines of effort, which are working together toward congregational vitality with a specific focus on small membership rural congregations, recruiting and developing diverse and adaptive leaders, living more fully into our baptismal promise to strive for justice and peace in all the earth, and convening leaders to discern responses to ongoing and emerging change. And the reason why we are inviting affirmation of this general direction and not wanting to get into wordsmithing all the details is because of this next resolve, which is that the Northwestern Synod and Assembly authorize the bishop and synod staff in collaboration with the Synod Council to adapt the strategic directions as needed in response to ongoing and emerging changes. So we found throughout this year that we can work forever on the wording, the specific wording, but at some point we got to roll up our sleeves and get to work. So any questions about resolution number 1? Okay, let's move on to, okay, yeah, so here is Exhibit A, and this is a one-page version of our strategic plan, which identifies our assets or the way that we, the ways and means that we have to accomplish what we wish to accomplish as a synod. You see there our values and our new mission statement, which is to nurture safe and healthy spaces for the ministry of the gospel to unfold and shape an abundant future for all in Northwestern Minnesota. You can see at the bottom some of the members of the core team, some names that are probably well known to you, and maybe some others that are not as well known. Really fine and important leaders in our synod. And then also on the right hand are the hoped for outcomes, what will result from our work. And we have outcomes that relate to congregations as well as to the whole synod. One outcome, for example, would be that every congregation, every member extends to a friend or neighbor at least one personal invitation to worship every year, or that there is at least one adult baptism or one new member received by affirmation of faith each year. If those things are happening, it means that our congregations are vital and they are engaging their community and growing in their own faith practices. So just a couple of examples of some hoped for outcomes. The other document, Exhibit B, is more detailed, and it goes into some more detail about each of the lines of effort and the strategic plan itself. Questions about the plan? Okay, not seeing any. Let's take on resolution number 2, and I believe Sharon or Julie, you'll be speaking to that.
I'll speak to that first.
Okay.
I think I'm unmuted.
You
okay.
are.
Okay, thank you. Resolution 2 and all the following resolutions are all in concert with each other. And one of the things that the people on the core strategic planning team did is they asked themselves every time a decision was made, whether or not that goal was attainable. So when you're talking about reaching out to one person, that's a whole lot more doable than it is to ask for 10. There's another item that I was hoping the bishop would mention, and that is the amount of commitment that a local congregation makes to their own efforts. And most congregations are expending, what is it, Bishop Bill? Something like 109%?
102% of their regular income goes towards fixed costs.
Right. And so that means there's very little additional dollars for programming in the local congregation. And so one of the things that we're asking is to try to get that down to 90% fixed cost so that there's something more like 10%. But you notice it's not asking for 50%. It's not asking for 40%. It's asking for some kind of a goal that's attainable. The people that served on that strategic plan also were people who had worked on boards, worked for corporations, and they believed really, truly that what your mission statement is and what your goals are things that actually determine the direction of your organization. And in our case, Northwest Minnesota Synod. So these resolutions that came out of this are all part of that same plan. So resolution number 2, excuse me, if you read it, what it is asking for is for the Constitution or the bylaws to be changed in order to have 2 more members at large. And the reason why that is if you're asking for diversity and you're asking for expertise and you're asking for things that the council needs at a given time, there needs to be some flexibility in encouraging and reaching out to people who can serve in that capacity. So this is the rationale behind having 2 additional at-large members. And the Synod Council, you should know, is working in concert with each other, working in concert with the bishop and with the Synod staff, and hopefully, because they're asked to on a regular basis, reaching back into their conferences and reaching back into their congregations to make sure that the messages from the people in the pew are actually getting to the Synod level. And that's been working out really quite well. So that's the rationale behind this. And if there are any questions, by the way, you should also know that the budget that you're going to be looking at also reflects that same kind of careful determination of where the dollars will be spent based on what the planning going forward and the mission statement says. Any questions? Any questions? And I also have to say, all of you who are on the Zoom call, you should be very, very pleased and proud of the people that are representing you from your conferences. You should be very, very pleased with all the hard work that the staff has done. And I can't say enough about Julie, who is incredible, and Catherine, who is now retiring as the treasurer, and of course, Chris, who've done such an outstanding job. And we can't forget Carla, and you'll hear more from Carla later on. But everybody has been working in concert, and it's sort of refreshing when you have people that are actually excited to come to meetings. And it's maybe because we're Zooming. And thank you, Bishop Larry from the past, who sort of started instituting this. So thank you so much. No questions. We'll move on to resolution number 3.
Thank you. And I think John Olson is on the call, and he's going to speak to resolution 3.
The Synod compensation guidelines, yes, 2022. I'll just briefly mention that we have a committee of 6 people. I'm the facilitator, and then there are 6 others. We have 2 word and sacrament folks that are on the committee, 2 word and service, and 2 lay people. So we have a variety on the committee to add their voices to the recommendations that are coming before the Synod Council and then to the Assembly. So I'll just review briefly. In 2021, the recommendation came that there be a 3% increase across the board for rostered service. And then of course, COVID hit, and the compensation guidelines committee said, and the Synod Council said, you know, congregations, depending where things are at, do the best you can, and you know, see where you end up in financially with your budgets that year, and what you can do for your rostered leaders. In 2022 now, the recommendations are coming for word and sacrament, that there be a $1,000 increase, and then there'll be another additional $500 for additional year of service. So roughly it would be a $1,500 increase over last year. And you will see that there is also an increase for word and service. Before, the word and service document provided just a range of for years of service for deacons and folks in word and service. And now there's going to actually be a chart in 2022 that'll look very much like the document that we have for word and sacrament. Chris, you are bringing that up, is that right? There it is. So before there was just a range with numbers of years of service. Now it's going to be years of experience, and an actual chart that looks very similar to the word and sacrament. And the reason for that, it'll be easier for ministries to figure out based on the years of service and other factors, education and experience, that kind of thing, what to do for their word and service rostered leader. We also felt strongly, and John Leseth and Kathy Hunstead were the two word and service folks on the committee. They felt that it looks more like the word and sacrament chart then, and it communicates that word and service folks are just as important as word and sacrament. Instead of just providing a range, now we're saying, you know, look here. We want it to send a message that it looks like the word and sacrament chart as well. So you can see what's recommended there, and you'll have that in the documents. Briefly, that's what we're looking at for 2022, and I believe it was approved by the Synod Council, and it will come before the Assembly.
Thank you, John. Thanks to your team as well for their good work. It'll come before you as a resolution to approve those documents, and so you will need to study the documents ahead of time to understand what the resolution is referring to. All right, what's next?
Resolution 4, boundary training.
Okay. So this resolution simply brings, and by the way, this is a change to the bylaws of the Constitution. What it does is it specifies a time frame in which rostered leaders are to receive boundary training. We do have in our Constitution right now the stipulation that all rostered leaders shall have boundary training, but we do not stipulate how frequently. Practice across most of the church is every 3 years, and that's also starting to become the expectation of most insurers. And so the Synod Council is bringing forward this resolution in order to bring that practice in alignment with current realities. And it's also just really important training for our rostered ministers to have on a regular basis. Of course, boundary training is especially concerned with prevention of sexual misconduct, but other boundary violations as well, such as financial misconduct or boundary violations related to social media, and understanding healthy boundaries around friendships while serving in ministry. So all of those things are addressed in boundary training. We, the Northwestern Minnesota Synod, have developed a actual distance learning opportunity. It's not just an online Zoom course, but it's a real distance learning course that's self-paced, an hour a week for 6 weeks. And so we've made it easy in that way for our rostered ministers to receive the boundary training, and also to ensure that they are participating, because it's like any other distance learning course. There's a requirement of some participation, and that course is designed and led by our Synod Minister for Health and Wellness, Reverend Dr. Aaron Sumala-Folkerts. So you see the resolution here, what's being added. Questions? All right. I have a note from Catherine that she's unable to join us today, so I can take a crack at those financials myself. So resolution 5 here is a continuing resolution on training to become an anti-racist. It's around anti-racism training, and this resolution comes from our Commission on Racial Equity by way of the Synod Council. So this one, like the rest of the resolutions, has its source as the Synod Council, and it is obviously this last year we were all horrified by the events we saw unfold on Memorial Day of 2020 with the murder of George Floyd, and that has really raised our awareness as a mostly white church to the realities of structural and systemic racism. And so this resolution attempts to address that with the requirement or the expectation that our rostered ministers receive some form of anti-racism training once every 3 years, up to 6 hours of anti-racism training. And our Commission on Racial Equity and Justice is receiving training from 2 consultants from the Milwaukee Area Synod who are doing excellent work with our commission. And they will have a team of people that are trained to provide this. But again, our rostered ministers will be free to receive this training from other sources that they may find more applicable to their particular ministry context or their own way that they'd like to approach this. We also then in this resolution will resolve that it be recommended that other lay professionals receive this training, and as well as lay leaders across our church would be a recommendation. So this is a continuing resolution, which was actually passed by more than a 2/3 margin of the Synod Council. So it actually is in force now, but we felt it was important with an important matter like this, that that the Assembly have an opportunity to weigh in. So at the Assembly, the margin for passage will be a simple majority.
Okay, and I would like to add something to this. Some of the words seem a little bit loaded, or a little bit, it could cause some nervousness or tension. The words are not the important part. It's the intent that is. And what it is to bring that topic of discussion to our professional leadership, but also the intent is to have that conversation continue down into that coffee hour on Sunday morning, but layperson to layperson, so that this can really bring about not only knowledge, but some change. And the only way that's going to happen is if we change individually. My sister has participated in these kind of programs over in the Milwaukee area, and they're excellent. And if you've been keeping track over the last year with COVID, you notice that the outreach of the Synod has taken, and the outreach of your local congregation has taken a dramatic turn. We're using media so much more. We're going to church on Zoom. We're having our conversations. We're reaching out to new people we never thought were part of our community before, because it's easy to do. I hope all of you have been reading the wonderful kinds of things that the bishop has been writing and the staff has been writing during this last year. I'm not sure if all of the people on this call know that the bishop and the pastors and everyone else involved have been having weekly Zoom calls at the beginning. Now they're spreading out, but acting as a support group. People are now presidents of congregations were involved with Zoom calls, things that could never happen before. So we're entering sort of a new, brave world. And part of that is that we really have to understand not only our neighbors, but more importantly, ourselves. And so based on this, we have, as your Synod Council and your representatives from your conferences, we have committed time and dollars to this project, because once again, what we say we're going to do, we're actually going to support financially and emotionally going forward. So thank you. And without, I can say this, and I was not paid by the bishop, but you have an incredibly energetic, with the energy you can't believe, bishop who has all kinds of interesting ideas, and he's not afraid to take a risk and not afraid to speak out the words of the gospel, which sometimes are uncomfortable, but you have an extremely good team going forward. And it's a privilege to work with all of you. And it's good to see friendly faces and people I know. So I just had to say that before. And now we have, what is it? Resolution number 6. But first of all, but do you have any questions about this? I want you to look at these things and take them to heart, because there is an action component. But once again, one of the strongest actions is to pray very first about all of the things that we're going forward with, because without prayer, there's nothing.
Thank you so much, Sharon, and for those kind words, and right back at you. We are Synod Council, You know, the one thing with Zoom this last year, our Synod Council attendance has been amazing. And Sharon has provided outstanding leadership throughout the year, and I'm grateful for our partnership. Pastor Carla, I'm going to invite you to talk about resolution number 6, and while you're doing that, also you could just go ahead and talk about the elections as well.
Good afternoon. Resolution 6, at each church-wide assembly, there are always changes that are made to the ELCA's constitution and to constitutions for congregations and synods. And so this particular resolution just brings our constitution in line with the model constitution for synods. There are 3 parts to it, and you can read those in depth, but the first part deals primarily with compensation to a bishop who is also compensated for other work within the synod. This doesn't necessarily apply to our synod. Oftentimes synods see this when a bishop also works as a director for evangelical mission within their synod. We are blessed to have our own director for evangelical mission, Keith Zay. And so, but we're just bringing our constitution up in line with the model constitution. And the same would be true on the second part that would affect our constitution in chapter 13. This deals with congregations that maybe get to the point where they have to close, and some congregations may have not taken the necessary steps to have a holy and devoted closing. They've just sort of left their building to go to ruin. And so this allows a synod to help step in and finish up the necessary steps that it would take to properly close a congregation. And the sentence that is underlined is what has been added to that particular provision. The third one is that in line with what our rostered ministers of Word and Sacrament are required to do, we also require that of our ministers of Word and Service, that they attend all of the meetings of our conference, cluster, coalition, subdivisions, and everything that is part of being part of a synod. So that those are the 3 non-required provisions that are in the Constitution. The required provisions, as Bishop Bill mentioned, they have been already implemented following the churchwide assembly. The ones that we are changing are involved in the resolutions, and those have already been discussed. So that would take care of bringing up our whole constitution up to the model constitution for our synod. Regarding elections, there are 2 sets of elections. There's elections for synod council member positions, and there are elections for churchwide assembly voting member positions and their alternates. We have a very full slate of candidates for those 2 groups, and that will be available. I think the biographies are available on the Synod website. Chris has got them there located. It's the last 2 pieces, and you can take a look at that. We still have a couple holes, and we are madly trying to fill those in. And I think that was mentioned, if you do have a nomination for one of those holes and the nomination, you have checked with that person and they fit all the criteria, those nominations can be submitted by Thursday at noon. So I think that covers it.
Pastor Carla, do you want to say anything about these constitution? Can you say anything about these constitution things that
Sure.
are up on the website too?
Yeah, the certifications come from churchwide assembly. There's a basically it's a letter that marks out all of the changes that were made to a synod or to a Synod constitution, and they're loaded onto the Synod website. The formal certification of required amendments that just shows all of the changes that were made to required or asterisk amendments to the Synod constitution. And then there's the certification of those that are recommended amendments. And so those are the two supporting documents that come from the ELCA.
Thank you, Pastor Carla. Any questions for Pastor Carla?
I do have one, Pastor Al Brooks. Carla, you mentioned there was some holes still to be filled. Can you tell us what those positions are? Maybe there's somebody here that knows somebody.
Yeah, we are still looking for one person. If the two positions that are added to the Synod Council for underrepresented populations, if that is passed by the Assembly, we are still looking for one more person to fill one of those spots. And in the churchwide assembly, we need a male person of color, either lay or rostered, to be one of our voting members. And we have several alternate positions. It's important to have the alternate positions because if someone can't go, we do need to press upon that alternate to fill in that spot. And so there are alternate positions in Conference 3, we need a lay male. In 5, we need a lay male. We need a youth or young adult female, and we need a person of color who is male, either lay or rostered, as an alternate. And we need a couple rostered ministers in conferences 3, 4, and 6.
And those are all
those are
alternate positions other than the first two you mentioned.
Those are alternates. We just have the one person of color who needs to be male, lay, or rostered in the voting member slot.
Okay.
But otherwise, those last ones are for the alternates.
If you pull up the biographies, there's some that have vacant next to it that are highlighted in yellow. Those are the ones that are needed. There's some we're still waiting for some information from people, but there's a name there. So you can skim that way. They're indicated.
And I would encourage you to think about doing that either yourself or finding someone else, because things that are happening at the national church are equally as exciting as things that are happening here. And so this is your opportunity to participate. And then with that nomination for another at-large person, think of ways, think of people that have skills or have experiences that can enhance the way that we're moving forward. So if any of you feel the Spirit moving you, you can nominate yourself. And you should know that we have now some passionate people on many of our committees, people that would never have thought they'd like to do this kind of thing, who are finding it exciting and fulfilling adventures. We have people on Lutheran advocacy now that are actually maybe going to say, hey, wait a minute. So we may get a reputation here in Northwest Minnesota, but that's what we'd like. So think about serving.
Thank you, Sharon. And churchwide assembly representation or being a voting member at churchwide assembly, you're present as a voting member. It's an amazing experience. Really, the worship is incredibly inspiring, and you have opportunities to connect and see really how vast and diverse our church can be and is in certain parts of the world. So I hope that you will consider serving in that capacity.
I should mention that the dates for the churchwide assembly are next year in 2022, and it's August 8th through the 12th. So it is a week-long event, but it is paid for by the ELCA. And so travel, lodging, and most meals are covered by the ELCA. So it's a big time commitment, but really important. I went last time and it was just fantastic.
So let's take a look at the financials. While Chris is bringing that up, just a quick note about this last year. Please pass along gratitude, a note of thanks to your folks for their continued generosity throughout this pandemic. It's really been amazing. When we first rolled into it in March, I'll just tell you a story. We saw immediately about a 35% drop in mission support from congregations. Of course, we can't sustain that as a synod. And so one of the actions we took was to immediately suspend our contributions to the churchwide organization and to our partners in ministry temporarily. Within 45 days, we were able to resume, not only resume all of our contributions to our partnership ministries and to our churchwide organization with our shared mission support, but we were also able before the end of the year to bring that up to our full commitment. We ended up finishing the year just a fraction of a percentage behind the year prior, and actually finished the year in a fairly strong financial position because some of our expenses were less. And so thank you so much for your continued amazing generosity that you demonstrated throughout this pandemic and continue to do so today. So why don't we take a look at you can see all of on this page, on the reports page, you have the very detailed audited, you can read the whole audit report if you want to. You might want to just look at that 2021 audited financial position for a quicker snapshot of how we are doing as a synod. We are, in terms of our financial position, how we finished the year, as I said, we finished strong, thanks to some pretty good returns on investments. Our endowment and our other invested dollars did well, and so our cash position increased significantly. And also, you can see we're up about, in terms of assets, up a little over $160,000. And so those are many of those dollars are designated for things like scholarships and debt reduction for our first call pastors that carry a burden of seminary indebtedness. And so we're able to do more than we were able to do in the past. And we also have a little bit more realistic of a reserve, about 3 months of operating reserve, which is, I think, a healthy amount for a synod. Let's look at the budget. So just a little story about this budget. For the year that just previously ended, we finished, as I said, just slightly below that budgeted amount. We are proposing a budget for this year of somewhat less mission support, just because we want to be conservative and we want to understand how our congregations are going to live into this new time and as we emerge from this pandemic. So this is a fairly conservative year, and we're able to be somewhat conservative and yet maintain all of our ministries because we are able to apply a little more than half of our payroll protection plan money that we received from the federal government back in March, April of this last year. We're able to apply that directly to fixed costs in this year. And so if you look at that line that says transfers from restricted, you'll note that it's significantly higher in this year. Those are restricted dollars that are coming primarily, the bulk of those, about $30-some thousand, are from our payroll protection plan money. You'll see that that number goes down again in 2023. You'll also note that it's significantly higher than it was in 2021. And this is because we are now very invested in both the Minnesota Gives and the Giving Hearts Day campaigns with those campaigns in the last year, we were able to bring in for special purposes and also to underwrite one small part of our budget. We were able to bring in over $100,000 in additional support. Much of that is being used for our work with small membership congregations and congregational vitality, as well as recruitment of leaders and leader resiliency. And so that's why you're seeing that increased amount in 2023, well over 2021, because some of those dollars that we intend to raise will flow into the budget specifically to subsidize. The way we're thinking of this is it's a way that we subsidize those 5 ministers for community and leader engagement that are doing work in ministry around our synod. You also note that we're hoping that our previous mission support amounts might be restored to levels pre-pandemic, and that'll be, we'll not only pray for that, but we'll also work hard with stewardship ministry and mission support ministry to help make that happen. Many of the same line items are here in this budget that you've seen before, but a couple new ones are here. We've added 2 new worshiping communities to our budget, Table of Mercy in Moorhead and the BSU First Lutheran Young Adult Ministry New Start. Table of Mercy in Moorhead is a new ministry among people struggling with homelessness, and the ministry in Bemidji is entitled A Place for Grace, and it is a ministry that's reaching out to emerging generations in partnership with First Lutheran there. We also have added the Commission for Racial Equity, a small amount to this line item. And then there's a major expenditure of about $20,000, which is in office expenses, so that we can revamp our, with professional help, revamp our webpage and our online presence and rebrand that. Something we had intended to do last year, but something happened. I don't know if you heard, but there was this thing called the global pandemic that occurred, and we got a little distracted. But we will get to this now this year. So, questions about the proposed budget? Again, if you'd like to propose changes to any of these proposed, or if you'd like to propose amendments to any of the resolutions or changes to the budget, the deadline is noon on Thursday. Chris, you want to talk about reports?
Sure. So on the page where you can find all the budget stuff, there are some reports that would be great if you could look at them, skim them before we meet on Friday and Saturday. The first one is Bishop Bill's report. It's a great report. I believe it's about 4 pages long. And it won't be the exact same thing that he speaks to during his report on Saturday. So it won't be redundant. This is the report of the work that's been done in the last about year and a half. And then here are all of the different people on Synod staff wrote a report, and they're all in one document here. A couple of these down here are some of our ministry partners that you can see their reports as well. Yes, and also one thing that I added today, I'm going to stop sharing that screen. I put up our proposed schedule. There was a schedule in the handbook that I hope that you all have looked at the handbook. One paper copy was sent to each congregation, but here is the participant schedule. It says sort of the breaks and lunch and the different resolutions when we'll speak to them then. It's tentative, as all business meetings are, for the times. but we will still make sure that we have the breaks in there as well. So take a look at that. That will be part of the consent agenda as well as the Synod Assembly minutes from our last meeting in 2019, as well as some of the Constitution changes. So take a moment to skim through those.
Thanks, Chris. So we will pass the agenda and the minutes and a couple of other items early on in the assembly. We'll vote on those as part of what we call a consent agenda, which is several items that require a simple majority, all in the same, all in one fell swoop, as they say. So in addition to the, go ahead.
Bishop Bill, did you notice that there are some questions that are coming forward that
I
were
didn't.
addressed to everyone?
Thank you.
One is dealing with the other tables that developed around other issues. Are they being, the question I think is, are they still continuing to be funded? But maybe
Yes.
you can look at that question and then respond to that.
Yes, the Native Neighbors table was very active prior to the pandemic, and then took a little break and then got very active again later on, and continues to be funded. I participate in that table myself, and I'm looking forward. Our next gathering is going to be in at the powwow on June 13th. I'm not even sure where it is, but I will be there, ready to meet some folks, and our Native Neighbors table will meet afterwards.
Okay, and as long as you're on the Zoom call, if you're not reading the weekly Synod newsletter, it's incredible. Chris is doing a super job with that. I'm forwarding it every week to all the members of my circle in my personal church. It gives you all the information, all the new exciting adventures that are being undertaken, but more importantly, it tells you what your staff is doing and where Bishop Bill is, so that you know what kind of upcoming events might be of interest to you or the people in the pews. So spread the word, get as many people on that listserv, and it's a way to stay connected after we no longer are under the pandemic rules. So thank you, Chris. Thank you, Bishop Bill, and thank you everybody else who's contributing. But now we'll send it back to the bishop.
Thank you. Before we head out, just note that worship, or the assembly will begin with worship at 9 o'clock on Saturday morning. We'll also have that practice session that we really urge everyone to attend on Friday night. And yes, there will be, you have to be present to win, but there will be amazing, fabulous prizes on Friday night. That's when we'll have opportunity to practice voting and to practice changing our names and doing stuff with Zoom, and also get a preview of what's coming the next day. That'll be just 1 hour from 5 to 6, right, Chris?
5:30 to 6:30.
5:30 to 6:30, okay. And then, but we'll begin the assembly the next day with worship at 9 o'clock, an inspiring worship service that's led by leaders across our synod, and including some folks from the White Earth Indian Reservation who will open our worship with drum and song. So we're really excited about that. Our keynote speaker this year is Dr. Willie Jennings, who is a really prominent theologian and author, teaches at Yale University after teaching for many years at Duke University, happens to be Baptist by background, and just his book, Christian Imagination, The Theology and Origins of Race, is really a groundbreaking work that is already being recognized by theologians around the country as a contemporary masterpiece of theological thought. And he's a phenomenal preacher. He's not going to preach, except that his Bible study on the book of Acts is probably going to sound a lot like a sermon. And we're really looking forward. We'll hear from him twice. He'll give a keynote address and he'll teach a Bible study on the book of Acts. We also, of course, last year we had planned, let's talk about our church-wide representative. Reverend Dr. Ruben Duran works with our churchwide organization, has worked for years with overseeing the whole enterprise of starting new mission congregations, 352 mission congregations to be exact. And that's where I got to know Ruben in my work as a DEM in the South Dakota Synod. He is an inspiring speaker and a phenomenal leader in our church, and I'm looking forward to hearing from him at our churchwide assembly. Last year, when we were planning to meet in person, of course, we were looking forward to celebrating the 50-40-10 anniversary, the 50th anniversary of the ordination of women, the 40th anniversary of the ordination of women of color, and the 10th anniversary of the ordination of our openly LGBTQ+ colleagues in ministry. And so this year, we're doing a couple of things. We have one of our leaders on our Synod Council and pastors in our Synod, Pastor Caitlin Jensen, working together with, coordinating with our staff to create a series of podcasts in which she interviews women in ministry and diverse people in ministry who are, and these conversations are just delightful. I encourage you to check those out. They're on our YouTube channel and also are linked here within our, or will be linked in the assembly webpage.
Yeah,
also, go ahead.
The first one is on our Synod's Facebook page right now, and I will, by the end of today, get the first one on the Synod Assembly site and be looking for the second podcast here on Wednesday morning.
And then this year's gathering of the women of the ELCA here in northwestern Minnesota will, the opening worship will be a celebration of the 50-40-10 as well. So we're looking forward to that. That's all of our business for today. Any final questions or comments before we wrap up?
Can you do the practice poll, Bishop Bill? Do you have?
Oh, sure. Let's do it. What is the question?
I think you probably are the person who has the access.
Oh, okay.
To the polls. So we are, all of the business that we can do with a simple majority, we'll be using Zoom polling.
I don't have access to the poll, Chris.
Pastor Carla, since you're on the thing, do you have access to the poll? Okay. So it will pop up on your screen and you can see the questions.
So just a note about voting. We will use Zoom polling for much of the voting. I'll make a judgment as the chair as to whether or not a motion has passed or failed. I want you, what I'll do is it'll need to be overwhelming one way or another, right? And in most cases, we believe it will be. And so the Zoom poll should be sufficient, but if it's at all close, we'll proceed to our voting, to Qualtrics, which is the voting system that we're using here with Concordia.
So Pastor Carla, can you share the results?
Yeah, the people are still voting. We've got 61% of the votes in. So finish up your voting. Pick your choice for, this is what I am most excited for Synod Assembly. 4 options. We have 80% who have voted.
Well, and Bishop Bill and I won't, so it won't be 100%. Yep.
And I won't be able to vote either. So, all right. So we have our, ooh, wow, interesting. Okay, so there are some who, okay, Bill, you will be so pleased with this. 33% of our voters are looking forward to getting to hear from our new bishop. 29% are really looking forward to the commute. 26% are really looking forward to getting to be in comfy clothes, and 12% voting on the constitutional changes.
Oh, I'm really shocked. I thought that one would be overwhelming.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
So there is a question with voting via Zoom. Will we need multiple logins from one household? If you could have a phone or a tablet or something else, so you can, that would be the most helpful, so we can get the majority, like then we'll know more. I know some congregations are meeting together, and so having 6 people decide one way might be a little difficult. And so if you can have your own voting device for that, be logged in, that would be great. The things that we do need to have, if a vote is closer or if there's something else, we will email that to you, and you will minimize Zoom. So at the top of my desktop, I have the X, the 2 squares, and the dash. And so you would select that and open up your email and vote. We will practice both a Zoom poll and the Qualtrics voting on Friday. And so you will have an experience with that before it's actually part of the business. I'll have a little bit more time to think of better polling questions, but we wanted to give you this option so you can see what it feels like.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. We'll make a determination kind of right away at the beginning of the assembly as to just how many shared devices there are out there. We'll be able to tell by just looking at the screen. And obviously, if it's too many, then we'll proceed to Qualtrics for every vote. But many of these votes are going to be, 80, 90%, and so, or more. And so it'll be fairly easy, even if there's some folks that are unable to vote because they're sharing a device. We'll still be able to call that, but it needs to be overwhelming for us to call it at that stage. And then after that, we'll proceed if it's at all close, or if we just are not comfortable making that judgment, we'll move immediately to Qualtrics. All right, that's everything, and we finished 22 minutes early, and so that doesn't mean that we have to sit here and stare at each other for the next 22 minutes. We can go and enjoy this gorgeous day. So thank you so much for your commitment to our church and in attending here the churchwide assembly as a voting, or the Synod assembly as a voting member. Thank you so much. Have a great day.